treasurer is Mr. Corey Brickle. Mr. Jerry Colby is the board clerk, and Mrs. Tricia Frunk is board representative. At this time, we need to elect a chair.
Mr. Lizoy, I'd like to nominate Randy Lizoy to be chairperson of the meeting tonight.
Okay.
Sorry.
We have first from Mr. Roman and a second from Mr. Colby to nominate myself as the chair for the meeting tonight. All in favor, then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next on the agenda then would be presentation of the September 24, 2012 annual meeting minutes, and this would require a motion.
Make a motion to dispense with the reading of minutes.
Mr. Chairperson, I'll second.
I believe we have a second from Mrs. Walker.
So I've got a first from Mr. Brickle and a second from Mrs. Runk to dispense with reading of the minutes. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next would be the presentation of the 2013-14 budget. Mrs. Lau?
Why don't you go first? I was going to say, just read it first.
That's okay. Pam, can you hit the next button? This is not
sure.
working.
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
Thank you. There are copies of the annual budget over here on the left for anyone that would like a copy. It's also on the website, which I think all the board members have. I only have a couple, just so you know. And I'll just start out with just some of the highlights and some of the background. Revenue limits were implemented in 1993, and the calculation uses the previous year's revenues as a starting point and a per pupil amount increase. Up until 3 years ago, the per pupil amount increase was annually between $190 and $275. In 2011-12 year, it was reduced by about $516 for the school district of Chilton. And last year, it was increased by 50, and this year it was increased by 75. The state legislation has also provided a categorical aid or adjustment aid of $75, which is one-time revenues which is outside of the revenue limits. This is just graphically showing you how the revenue limits have been adjusted over the past years since the implementation of the revenue limit cap. Last year, the school district under-levied for the debt service fund. This is just reiterating what I had prepared last year. As long as you use fund balance when you under-levy, there is no penalty for under-levying. We did do that. We did use our fund balance. We used it to pay off our unfunded or our non-referendum debt, as well as a portion of referendum debt, and the board's effort to hold the mill rate down because it was going to go up $1, and they used it to help offset that. The goals of the board have been met. We did reduce our fund balance from 34% in the 11-12 year to 25% for the end of the 12-13 year, and it's projected that it will go down to 24% at the end of the 13-14 year. And again, it was to soften the impact of the mill rate, and there too, it did provide that. We only went up 54 cents instead of $1 last year, and this year it's projected to actually go down a penny. So. Another key component of our budget is head counts, number of students that we have in our school district. We use 2 different counts. One is the actual number of students in our seats that we educate, and that's the student head count. And then we need to make adjustments by taking out, doing adjustments for open enrollment and for students that are participating in the county program to come up with our membership count, and that count is used for revenue limits and how much money we can get from the state. The next slide shows graphically how our enrollment trends have been. The blue line being the membership count, which is used for revenue limits, the red line being those actual students in our chairs. And then I have also provided 5-year projection showing that we are projecting some growth over the next 5 years on our enrollment. Student demographics, though this does not play any key to our revenue limits, it is important because it does affect how we utilize some of our expenses. The racial demographics show that we have a white population of about 87%. Our Hispanic population has grown to about 10%. African American 2%. Pacific Asian Islanders, less than 1%, as well as Native Americans. We also have a population of about 15% of students with disabilities, and our free and reduced population is, or economically disadvantaged students, is about 31%. Our staffing history over the last 5 years shows that we have done some reduction of staff, and most of that has been due to, obviously, our enrollment decline. We have added staff for the 13-14 year. We've added physical education teacher. We've added an English teacher at the middle school to help reduce class sizes. And we have also added on classroom aides and English language learner aides to help in the classrooms as well for services that students need. Our revenues for the 13-14 year are projected to be about almost $15 million. Some of the changes that you've seen in our revenues are due to the end of our federal PEP grant, and we also received a decrease in our insurance premiums, which has obviously helped to reduce some of those expenses. Debt service revenue increase is due to last year the board used fund balance to pay for part of that, whereas this year we'll be using our levy. Our instructional revenues are projected to be about $11.3 million. This is a decrease over last year. Again, the reasons behind this is because of the PEP grant and some adjustments that we had made to our insurance. About $10 million of our expenditures are controlled by revenue limits, and the remaining comes from student fees, interest, aids, and grants from federal and state. This just graphically shows how much of our income is coming from state and local. You can see that instructionally, about 60% of our money comes from the state, and 30% is local tax dollars and fees, those kind of things. And then for the general fund, about 93% of our general fund monies come from sources of state and local. The rest is all others. Our expenditures we're showing a slight increase in the general fund. This is due mainly to salary increases. The special projects fund is decreasing due to the direct hire of many of the contracted staff that we had with CISA 7. Debt service is going down. Again, we paid off a portion of our debt last year. And the community service fund is increasing due to the hire of a police school liaison officer. Our instructional fund expenditures are increasing just a small amount, 41,000, less than 0.5%. Again, these funds reflect the adjustment due to the PEP grant, the federal grant being finished this past year. We did hire, again, a middle school teacher, a FIAD teacher, and instructional aides. Salaries and benefits represent about 76% of our budget, and an additional 2% are for CSIS purchase services for our special education program. This just graphically shows how the expenditures are for the instructional funds. Other than wages and benefits, the second largest portion is purchase services, which consists mainly of services that we purchase from vendors other than CSIS 7, utilities, transportation services, payments to other schools for youth options, Cascade programs, things like that. This slide shows a comparative of our expenditures per student to our, the outcomes of our testing with the state. This is the 11-12 data, and it's the most recent data that we have. The current educational cost is the overall instruction and support with the exclusion of transportation, debt, and capital projects. So looking at this data, you would see that for educational services, Chilton is one of the lowest districts in our area and much lower than the state average, while we continue to provide, receive scores higher than the state average outcomes on the testing. Once we add in transportation, debt service, and other services like food service, then our per pupil amount goes up. The tax levy that is being proposed this evening is for $5,452,903. This is an increase of about $47,000, less than 1%. The mill rate is estimated to be $11.51. This is a decrease of about a penny. And we do not have the information regarding school tax levy credits. Those are applied by municipalities when your tax bills come in December. This is a breakdown of the tax levy by the fund. And again, you can see the changes from prior year. And this pie shows graphically how the property taxes split amongst the funds. The general fund comes out to be about $6.73 per thousand. The debt fund is about 34%, and that comes out to be $3.92. The remaining two funds of capital expansion and community fund comes out to be 86 cents per thousand. This is just a graph showing the mill rate, again showing a decrease of about a penny. Equalized values within the district. This is just showing graphically the mill rate applied on a $1,000 home and how that has graphically changed over the years. The distribution of the equalization value or equalized values shows that the city of Chilton makes up almost half of the district's values, the rest being split amongst 8 other municipalities. History of our property values for the last 10 years shows that we have, up until 2008, we were seeing an increase in values. That trend has ended, and we are now seeing decreases or increases of less than 1% over the last 6 years. This graph shows our debt, our outstanding debt. The dark blue is the interest, light blue is the principal. You'll see a peak in the 12-13 year of the principal, and that's due to the paying off of the non-referendum debt. From here on, from here on out, from 13-14 on, it stays pretty constant. Final adjustments that will be made to the budget will be the certification of equalized values that will come the beginning of October. The DPI will certify the final state aid on October 15th. The revenue limits need to be recalculated with that information, as well as our enrollment count that took place on Friday. It hasn't been completed yet, but that's based on this past Friday's student count. And then the local tax levy needs to be recalculated based on the final revenue calculation, and then the board will make its final approval to set the levy at the October 28th board meeting. Obviously, if you have any questions, you certainly are free to contact either Dr. Martin or myself. Are there any questions that I can answer for you at this time?
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Lau. And now the superintendent's address.
Just a few comments to comment on the budget, but I've been asked to keep my comments brief, so I promise that I will try and meet that request. We indicated on the agenda for this meeting that we will make this available to the public. We recognize that not everyone can come to a 5:30 meeting on an important topic such as this. But the agenda recognizes that we will put this video on the public access channel, and if that is available to us, we will certainly do that. But we will also post this video on the district website so that folks that are not here this evening or have an interest in how the annual meeting discussion unfolded can make themselves available, or we can make the video available to them. First of all, as I do every year, and I mean it most sincerely, I want to thank the Chilton staff and the Chilton administration, particularly Mrs. Lisa Lau, in help in preparing and presenting this budget to you this evening. Every year, I think that Mrs. Lau outdoes herself from the previous year. Just about everything there is to know about the Chilton Public Schools is in this document. And I think that it is laid out in as clear and concise a way as humanly possible. All of our goals, surveys of student graduates, surveys of the public, student achievement, certainly all of our financial data, it can all be found in here. And if there isn't anything that you have an interest that isn't in this document, please contact Mrs. Lau or myself, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. I'd also like to thank the Chilton Board of Education for their support in representing the community as this budget is put together and presented, specifically the Finance Committee, Mr. Brickle and Mr. Kreider, who have spent countless hours meeting with Mrs. Lau and myself, other administrators and school staff, to really thoroughly understand the needs of the district and put together the budget that you see presented to you tonight. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank the Chilton community for your financial support, your continued moral support of us as we continue to educate your children each and every day, your trust in us as we continue to educate your children, and your willingness to challenge us and to question us when things don't just seem to add up, or things don't seem to be just right, or perhaps when there's a better way of doing things than what we're currently doing. We encourage that, we invite your questioning, and we ask that you continue to do so. On page 3 of the budget document, some of you have that available to you, and again, it will be posted on our website. And also on pages 34 and 35 of the document, you will see the calendar for the 2013-14 budget year. And you will notice that as soon as we finish this budget in October, we will begin in October planning for the 14-15 budget year. So we are constantly in preparation. We are constantly in planning. And in many ways, as Mrs. Lau referenced, tonight's meeting is still a preliminary meeting. as in October, the board will make final budget adjustments and the levy will be certified. So there's still much work to be done, and the work is continually ongoing. On pages 5 and 6 of the document that you have, Mrs. Lau details the major goals of the district. These are primarily the academic goals of the district. And later on this evening in the Board of Education meeting, the principals will be updating those goals for the 2013-14 school year. But our focus continues to be on reading goals, math goals, and 21st century goals. Reading and math, of course, are the core skills of our curriculum. With success in those two critical areas, we believe that students can be successful across all areas of the curriculum. And in 21st century skills, we are trying to get at the specific skills and dispositions that students will need in order to be successful in this century that we can no longer call a new century that we are now well into. There's a summary statement on page 23 of the document that you have that I'd like to take a moment to share with you, because this budget takes into account the use of fund balance to offset the district's budget deficit once again. It says, many tough decisions were made to control costs for the 2012-13 school year. The Board of Education has committed to using fund balance to offset the general operation budget deficit. What we set forth here considers the economic challenge that our citizens face while still allowing us to continue working toward accomplishing district goals outlined by the school board and staff in a cost-effective manner. The cost-effective manner is something that we continue to focus on, despite the fact that the board continues to use fund balance to help us reach our goals, to help us meet our budget deficit. As Mrs. Lau indicated, the board has a board goal of a budget of a fund balance not to exceed between 20 and 25%. At the end of the 2012-13 school year, that fund balance was at 25%, and at the end of this current school year, it is projected to be at 24%. So once again, the board is acting within its prescribed policy. In January of 2013, I presented the board with an outline of district goals and the resources needed to achieve those goals. And in the past, I have referred to this document as the Quality Schools presentation. While still utilizing our resources as effectively as possible, we continue to look for increased economy within our financial resources. But the Chilton Board of Education is committed to providing the resources necessary for a balanced, well-rounded, and relevant educational experience to all Chilton students. This budget represents that goal to provide those resources for our students. As also reflected in Mrs. Lau's report, this budget reflects no position cuts for the 2013-14 school year. We have increased our staffing through instructional aid positions, a part-time reading position at Chilton Middle School, a full-time physical education teacher position at Chilton High School, and with the addition of a full-time PSLO officer through our partnership with Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Additionally, after a voluntary wage freeze by all Chilton employees during the 2012-13 school year, the board has provided in the 2013-14 school year, represented in this budget, all of its employees with a fair and equitable wage and benefit package that exceeded the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Current requirements stipulate that boards of education across the state are only required to negotiate the CPI with their local teacher union representatives. This wage and benefit package that was accomplished some important objectives for the board. And that is, it increased the starting salary of beginning new teachers, allowing us to remain competitive in the market and continue to attract quality young talent to our school district. It also recognized and rewarded those staff members who continue to provide a quality educational experience to Chilton students with their continuing service. Mrs. Lau and I have been inviting various community members to participate in a tabletop exercise entitled Investing in Wisconsin Public Schools. And in that tabletop exercise, we identify the various stakeholders that are part of this product that we produce in our school district called a relevant and quality education. Those stakeholders, one might think first and foremost would be students, but they also involve parents, community members, colleges, the university system, the technical college system, and certainly our business community. Among these groups, there are often many competing interests. I believe that this budget, the one presented to you this evening, does an excellent job of meeting the needs of those competing interests by providing a quality education to all Chilton students to ensure that all students are career and college ready, prepared to meet the dynamic demands of the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Martin. Next on our agenda then would be number 7, Resolution A, and this would require a motion.
I'm not sure if people in the members of the audience have a copy of the agenda so that the motions can be read if you are so willing to make the motion for your local. There are samples available over on the side. Good, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience willing to make a motion?
I move there be levied upon the taxable property of the school district of Chilton the sum of $5,189,353 for the purpose of defraying the operational debt and community service of the public schools of said district for the 2013-14 school year.
Is that the right one?
I was gonna say this.
That's resolution B.
Okay,
We're trying
go to
to-
number 7.
Pull it down for A.
Seven.
Okay.
A is there.
Yes.
Sorry, I'd like to rescind that.
Or make it next. You did very well.
I change it to be Resolution A, to extend a capital expansion fund and levying the tax in connection therewith, be it resolved by the electors of the school district of Chilton, the capital expansion fund is hereby extended pursuant to section 120-.10 of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of financing, remodeling, maintenance, repair, and improvement projects at various district buildings and sites, and be it further resolved that the tax in the amount of $264,320 be levied for the 2013-14 school year to be deposited in the capital expansion fund to be used only for the purposes specified above.
Thank you, Mr. Apple. Now I would need a second.
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments on Resolution A? If not, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Apple. Next up would be number 8, Resolution B, adoption of the 2014 local tax levy. This also would require a motion.
Mr. Chairperson, since it's already been read, I would like to authorize operational debt service, community service tax levy, and move that we levy the taxable property of the school district of Chilton, the sum of $5,189,253 for the purpose of defraying the operational debt and community service of the public schools of Chilton Public Schools for the next 2 years. Next year, 2013, 2014. Trying to outlive it.
Okay, and I also need a second for the motion.
I'll second.
So I've got a first from Mr. Roman and a second from Mr. Colby. Any questions or comments on Resolution B? If not, all in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next would be Resolution C, set salaries of school board members, and this would require a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to set school board member salaries at $1,000 per year.
And I would need a second.
So Chairman, I'll second the motion.
Okay, got a first from Dr. Martin and a second from Mrs. Schmidt-Hofer to set the school board salaries at $1,000 per year. Do we have any questions, comments? If not, all in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next would be number 10, Resolution D, establish reimbursement of expenses for school board members. And this also would require a
Mr.
motion.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve reasonable expenses for board activities, including conferences, fees, mileage, meals, and lodging.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got first from Mr. Roman, second from Mr. Apple. On Resolution D, do we have any questions or comments? If not, all in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next would be number 11, Resolution E, authorize the board to retain legal counsel. This would require a motion.
Mr. Chairperson, I move to approve Resolution E, the authorization to retain legal counsel.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have first from Mr. Brightwell and a second from Dr. Martin on Resolution E to authorize the board to retain legal counsel. All in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 12, Resolution F, authorize the school board to purchase, operate, and maintain transportation vehicles and to purchase liability insurance for such vehicles and to finance contracts for the use and services of such vehicles. And this will require a motion.
Can you just say so move?
Okay, so moved.
So moved.
So moved. Mrs. Judy?
So move it.
Okay. Got a first from Mrs. Schutte and a second from Mr. Kreider on Resolution F. Do we have any questions, discussion on Resolution F? If not, all in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 13, Resolution G, authorize the school board to furnish a school nutrition program. This will require a motion.
So moved.
Got first from Mr. Brickell and second from Mrs. Rump on Resolution G. Any questions, discussion on Resolution G? If not, all in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 14, Resolution H, authorization for the school board to furnish textbooks. And this would require a motion.
Motion.
Second that motion.
Got a first from Mrs. Runk and a second from Mr. Roman on Resolution H. Any discussion or questions on Resolution H? If not, all in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 15, Resolution I, authorize the school board to make temporary loans for current operation according to statutory requirements. This would require a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. I'll second.
Okay, we've got a first from Mr. Colby and a second from Mr. Apple on Resolution I. Any questions, comments on Resolution I? If not, all in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 16, Resolution J, set the annual meeting date for 2014-15. And,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we allow the board to set the meeting date for the annual meeting for 2014.
Second.
Okay, resolution K, we need a motion is for the board to set the annual meeting date for 2014. Any questions on the motion? Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 17, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Apple.
All in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for working on that.
Here we go.
Thank you.